making their mark was during COVID. We were shut down, and then we had to rescue it. And then, I think what the team put forward was, incredible. I would literally get 4 or 5 phone calls from each of them saying, I've got something on the other one, but you can't tell him. JB's brother worked for the Coaches Association and he was given a tip off by the makeup lady at Fox. Spud had no idea, completely blindsided. And it took him a while to figure it out. And finally the penny dropped on air and, oh shit, this is about me.
All right, Dos, we've been looking forward to this for a very long time. We finally got him. It was hard to find a contact, but eventually we did. Luke Tunnecliffe, welcome to the Dos&d Show.
Thank you, boys. Absolute privilege to be here with you.
We are honoured to have you here with us, mate. We're kind of trying to talk off air on where we want to start or where we want it to go. But can you maybe put it into a bit of a nutshell on what you actually do, Luke? Because it's not an everyday job. It's probably our dream job, to be honest, but it's not your everyday Joe.
Look, I'm pretty fortunate to do what I do and have done for quite some time, and that's work in the television industry and also radio. If you go back way ago, I started at the Collingwood Football Club walked in there as a 17-year-old. And I was there for, almost 5 years in the coach's box. And then fast forward from there, went into media. Eddie Maguire took me from Collingwood across to Nine. And from Nine, I was there for 8 or 9 years. And then from there into radio, and then back to a production company, which we're in today, which is Jam TV. So that's the nutshell version.
The nutshell.
So expanding a little bit, what was your job title at Collingwood? And are you a Collingwood nuffy? Is that where it comes from? Or?
Mad Carlton.
Mad Carlton,
So
okay.
I went at the age of 17, finished school, and tried to get a job at the Carlton Football Club, AFL traineeship back in the day. And Carlton said no, and that broke my heart. And so I somehow got a job at Collingwood, which is, basically my family wanted to disown me at the stage. And I walked in as a 17-year-old. I'm not exactly a hulking human being, as you can see, and you can imagine what I was like at 17. Yeah. Walked in and, there's Sav Rocker and Anthony Rocker and Nathan Buckley and just little old me. And, sat in the coach's box, as I said, for 4 or 5 years. Probably the youngest that's ever done it, as a Carlton supporter.
Yeah.
And I learnt pretty quickly that, once you're inside a football club, it becomes your life. And so, there and then I became a Collingwood supporter for the next 5 years.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I'm assuming back then you probably don't really realise or understand as a 17-year-old the impact, just little opportunities, little pockets of experience that you get in each different way of life, I guess you could say. Now that you look back, you've kind of experienced so many different things. You've been across so many different productions, so many different large projects. Kept thinking back to your 17-year-old self at Collingwood, do you kind of wish you, I don't know, or do you pinch yourself kind of looking at that going, oh, geez, if I knew that back then, I would have no idea that this is where my life would kind of take me?
Oh, I was very lucky.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. I had no experience. I had no right to be in the job. The actual title, to answer your question, was the Football Technology Manager.
Football Technology
And I didn't
Manager.
know a lot about technology. So to do that role, which is back in 1997, was a new thing in football. So that was the advent of stats and, champion data at the time. And so I was sort of a pioneer in that stats and video analysis space. And I was frankly learning as I went, and I probably told a few lies that I knew what I was doing when frankly I didn't. So, it's an unbelievable experience, to sit in a coach's box for a couple of AFL grand finals and, experience what I did and all the travelling at that age. My first interstate trip with the team literally was as a 17-year-old.
Crazy.
And I look back now and think not sure how that happened, but it did. And I was really lucky to work under Tony Shaw for the first couple of years, then Mick Malthouse, and both of them are amazing to me. So I'm really lucky.
And did you say you didn't go to uni? Did you go to uni and study any of this?
Nope.
Wow.
On the job,
Yeah.
AFL traineeship back in the day, and it was an incredible opportunity to work and just, learn on the job. And, particularly those first 3 or 4 years, it was 7 days a week during footy season. So, you were supposed to, as a trainee, you're probably supposed to do 4 days a week. I was doing 7 because once you're inside a football club, that's what it is during footy season. Again, just an unbelievable experience.
So the constant and the theme that we're hearing, so Triple M, Collingwood, Channel 9, Jam, so there's obviously Eddie. Yeah. So what does he see in you at such a young age that you basically, I don't want to say right-hand man, but he's brought you along, obviously, to numerous places. What has he seen, do you think, in you to make him poach you?
Oh, look, you have to ask him, but probably work ethic, I'd like to think. When it's all said and done, I'd like to think that my main attribute is hard work. Certainly don't have a doctorate or anything, but I'd like to think that I work hard and I listen, and I'm a pretty good people person.
Well, I was just going to touch on that too. I think probably one of the biggest elements, by the sounds of things, is being a good person and building good connections, and probably going to as many different events or different things as you can, because you just don't know where the next contest, I remember my old boss used to say, working in sales, get to as many contests as you can. That's the more opportunities you're going to get to touch the pill or get the footy. I'm assuming that's maybe part of your mindset too. Early days was, I need to network. Even reading Eddie's book, like going out, trying to connect, network. Early days in the media.
It seems like your old boss is very similar to Ed, because Ed's got he's got many sayings, but one of his sayings is, "There's no point being where the ball ain't."
Yeah.
I.e., go to everything and just put yourself forward, because you're not going to get a story or you're not going to get a new client if you're not there on the spot.
Yep.
So, I've always lived by that. And always lived by, another one of his mantras at Collingwood was, if you're aware of the Theodore Roosevelt quote, "The man in the arena." You got to be the man in the arena. And, you get a few punches in the nose over the journey. You just got to keep boxing on. So he's certainly got many quotes.
That quote was hanging in our lounge room for a while when we lived together.
Yeah, it did. I heard he loved it. Speaking of punches in the nose, now I've heard some rumours about Eddie and working with Eddie, that when things might not go to plan, that sometimes it can get a little bit heated. Have you been on the end of a Eddie Maguire spray or something? Does any stories come to mind?
No, I don't know how or why I've survived 25 years, but no,
Wow.
Ed's fantastic. He's very generous with his time, and he's nurturing. He expects excellence.
Yep.
But it seems like most of those sprays are reserved for. I hear Dane Swan tell a couple of his stories, but the Collingwood boys over the journey have copped a few bakes, but no, not at this end.
Have you loved the evolution of media? Like, you've probably seen it from obviously the 90s to where it is now, 2024. I guess I love all the different documentaries, the access we're able to get now from things like, Stan and the different documentaries, Apple TV and whatnot. How have you enjoyed working in that evolution of the football or sporting media landscape?
Oh, look, it's been amazing, and it has evolved unbelievably so, particularly probably since the streamers came into vogue, more so in Australia, which was sort of, 2018, something like that. It's probably only been 6-7 years. Netflix was first here, then your Amazons and Disneys, etc. So it actually hasn't been that long. In reality, that the streamers have been here, but they've changed. They've changed the game, and the 9s, the 7s, the free-to-airs. Yeah, it's as challenging as it's ever been, but they're still putting out great products, and ultimately you've got to keep evolving and finding new ways, new revenue streams to grow either your business or your productions. So,
because we were chatting off air, do you remember the video Passion to Play, like one of the original behind the scenes? And then I actually wanted to ask, I don't know if were you involved with the Essence of the Game It was a documentary that came out in 08. I remember I was just obsessed with that. Like, Inner Sanctum is just something that, like, as a viewer, we just love. But we've, like, for so long, we probably have never gotten it till now. Yeah.
Oh, look, the original one was probably the Bulldogs.
Oh, yeah.
Back in Terry Wallace's day.
What was that called again?
Year of the Dog.
Year of the Dog.
Yeah.
And there's a famous spray in that, which you probably need to insert.
Yeah, the spew up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's look, that was well ahead of its time. And then, you know, you fast forward 10, 15 years, then finally all these docos are catching up. I mean, I'm a big NFL and NBA. American sports for me is what I love and my passion. So Hard Knocks was sort of the first of its type in the NFL, you know, 15 years ago. You know, and thankfully the AFL's caught on and we did Making Their Mark for Amazon in the 2000 season. Happened to be during COVID, so there was certainly some added extra layers to it. But it's taken a time for these things to get to Australia because ultimately they're expensive to make. Docos, sport docos are not cheap, particularly when you're following a whole season of things. You know, shoots are expensive, your post is expensive, but the storytelling's fantastic. And, you know, what they're doing in the States at the moment with, you know, Drive to Survive is what everybody talks about. But most recently on Netflix, Sprint, if you haven't watched that, brilliant series.
Have you watched Dynasty on Apple TV
Dynasty,
yet?
fantastic.
That was one of the best docos I've ever seen.
Look, there's so many sports docos. I could be here all day discussing it. But, and they've all got their pros and their cons. The one I'm watching or just finished at the moment is Receiver on Netflix, which is also an NFL one just leading into the season. No, they're good.
So, and I would like to kind of hear a little bit more about how these things actually, like you said, they're expensive to make, they're tough to make. But can you take us behind the scenes of, let's say, Making Their Mark, for example, because obviously a lot of our audience are probably AFL lovers and familiar with it. What goes in? How do you actually produce a documentary that big? You know, as in depth as you can probably give us in terms of, you know, approaching clubs and players and getting permission, and then obviously everything else that comes from there.
There's many hurdles when you're starting out at a doco, and you know you start with access and IP. In that instance, you know, we ultimately said, all right, what show do we want to make? What does this doco look like? We decided to focus on 5 key characters at 5 clubs, and so for 5 characters at 5 clubs in 5 different states over a 7-month period, it's a pretty significant undertaking. So, you know, ultimately we put together a deck and went and pitched that out, and you know, Amazon were, you know, they saw the vision, and they actually grew it from where we originally had it to where it ended up becoming was a lot bigger.
How far out are you pitching this? Sorry,
that was about 2.5, 3 years before you would have seen a frame on air.
Gotcha.
Like these doing docos generally are. They're long burns. It's not something you turn around really quickly, particularly when you're shooting over that period of time. But your pre-production is a significant period, then your post-production's significant. So
And what, like, how many people are working on, say, a project like that?
That was 128 crew worked on Making Their Mark. Wow. Again, you're talking about 5 states.
Yeah.
That was during COVID as well. Huge. So it was a significant undertaking. We did similar 12 months later with the AFLW girls on Fearless, called Fearless on Disney. And that was, again, a big production.
So even like casting, for lack of a better word, to obviously pick the 5 storylines you're going to go for, are you pitching to players? Are they pitching to you? Do you go to a club and say, let's say Nick Nat in West Coast, do you go to West Coast and say, hey, there's an opportunity, who wants to put their hand up? Or do you go, Nick Nat's our man, how do we get him? How does it work?
No, look, we were pretty lucky that what we set out, which was a really diverse cast of, it's not unlike a reality show. You know, we've done reality in the past with The Recruit, and you cast those shows, you want an older guy, a younger guy, you know, someone struggling, someone going great, someone from, you know, a private school, somebody who's battled their way through. Like, there's so many different angles and so many great stories that you want to tell them all, and ultimately it comes together and it meshes together. So that in particular, if I'm trying to think back about Nick Nat, I think the show ended up pretty much as we originally pitched it. which we're really fortunate that everybody bought in.
Give us 30 seconds to tell you why Fleet Plan Hire Solutions are the best in the business.
Well, let me kick it off.
Go.
Fleet hire,
Yep.
plan hire,
You're singing to me.
truck
hire?
truck hire.
Yep.
What size projects?
I would say big, like maybe roads, tunnels, and bridges.
Yeah, but they can also do smaller ones, can't
What,
they?
like swimming pools and excavations in your
Yeah,
backyard?
all that stuff.
Really?
And they bring everything to you.
And I heard their customer care is number one.
Yeah, they are the best.
So that's true.
Yeah, head to fbh.com.au, find out more information. We couldn't do the show without him. Thank you, Fleet Plan.
Back to the episode with Luke Tunnecliffe.
Now, Luke, you touched on, you're touching on a heartstring, actually, the recruit. So this man right here.
Don't tell me you applied for it.
No. Luckily, I was probably. Oh no, probably would have been.
You love that show still, don't you?
Yeah, it's one of my comfort shows, Luke. I've
It actually is.
probably not going to like hearing this, but I have found a part of the internet that you can illegally watch it. So
Good.
yeah,
I'm all for it.
and yeah, I've watched it probably as recent as I'm blushing. As recent as late last year.
Series 1 or Series 2?
Series 1. I'm a Series 1 man.
So you're a Vossi guy versus a Mick guy
yeah,
who's Series 2?
I thoroughly enjoyed it. I don't know where we're going with
I
this.
don't know.
but-
Well, maybe like, is there anything like, is that, in today's day and age, or maybe go back, is that a really hard show to produce, not produce, but create based on the logistics of the prize being a list on an AFL club? Because I know watching it, and I'm probably thinking, geez, like, can they do that? Like, he just gets a list on a spot. Yeah.
Something that's never been done.
It's just so rare. Is that probably too hard to do in today's day and age based on the prize?
No, because it's all about relationships.
Yeah.
And it's all about how the league sees themselves wanting to grow, whether that be AFL or any sporting code. They've got to be open to growth. And, with that show, having a conversation with Eddie and our CEO, Cos Cardone, way back when, we always thought that there was a place for a reality show based around AFL. The next conversation would have been with, the AFL CEO at the time to say, hey, we think you should do this. To do it well, you really need a prize at the end of it. A guaranteed contract is it's better than a $20,000 check.
Yeah.
Because it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. And that's what we sold the dream on.
Yeah.
And so you talk about the logistics, it was a pretty full on experience.
Yeah.
But I look back now and just think how fortunate we were. It was amazing. Like we basically shot across a 10-week period. We bring these guys into a house. We shot in every state in Australia, including Tiwi Islands and the Red Centre, and we just did some incredible things. It was just such a great experience.
In those examples, are you, like, what's your role in that? Are you there? You're overseeing it all? What is your position within that?
So my title back then was would have been executive in charge of production. So yes, I was at everything from training sessions right the way through to
Really?
like literally everything. We trained at the Junction Oval like a proper team. 4 days a week. They were living in a house 7 days a week, and they had to live. We had to provide an elite environment for them, and that's everything from nutrition to recovery, to the doctors, to to everything. It had to feel like a mini footy club for that period of time. So,
Have you got something to show us, Sammy?
If you think you know what it's like to play AFL football, you don't. You do not. That is why you are here.
The recruits will be coached by
He was scary on
arguably
that show,
the
Vossi.
greatest footballer of all time, Michael Voss.
Look at
an
that.
absolute legend of
wait
the
for
game.
this here.
Tough player,
Come on, move! Get inside that line!
tough coach.
You're not going to go easy on these boys, are you, Ross?
That is not good enough. Get up on your hands, Gossy! No, they'll get everything.
It's actually one of the boys I bumped into recently. One of the players. It's the 10-year anniversary. So
Oh, right.
Bit of a reunion.
it's fair to say that Vossi's kicked on from the recruit.
He's kicked on. Yeah. But like Dos mentioned earlier, we're fortunate enough that we have been able to chat to some unbelievable athletes that we've idolised our whole life and hear their story. And they often talk about like legacy, for example. So in your field, these kind of shows have never been done, especially in in the AFL space. Dos mentioned some of those old docos that I suppose set a scene. Where do you see it going more in the entertainment space, probably over the next 5 to 10 years? Do you think clubs are more willing to give more access to fans? Are they more hesitant than they were a few years ago? Where do you see it going?
Oh, look, I think they should embrace it. I mean, you only need to look at, again, it's hard to sit here and talk about America all the time but they are the best at what they do. They have such a big following worldwide because they're so accessible. And, you know, they allow their fans in more so than any other sport. Now, there are some clubs here that do that. I mean, the Giants, there are some really progressive clubs in the AFL, particularly the ones that need it. I mean, I would always advocate for the clubs to be open, transparent and giving, but a lot of them, you know, try and do their own content and their own platforms, and that's fine. I mean, they want to monetize that, but you're not necessarily growing your fan base by doing that. So, yeah.
Let's go across to, I guess, so we've hit the TV, kind of the TV shows, loving the documentaries, like I said. But you have such a huge part in football radio, and you have for a long, long time. Can you maybe share a little bit about getting into the radio sector, I guess, from your earliest moments?
Yeah, look, I mean, I was really fortunate to work with James Brayshaw at 9, and he was young. He'd sort of come across from Adelaide, Triple M, and this is a time, you know, with peak Sam Newman, and, you know, Jim was thrown in, and after a couple of years, he said, you know, and at that stage I was, how old was I? 23, I think.
Wow.
He said, I want you to come over and produce the Saturday Rub. And yeah, I was, you know, sort of lucky enough to grow up with it and then be in it. Legendary Lee Simon was one of the creators of it, along with Eddie, way back, I think it was 1998, something like that. And yeah, so they gave me the opportunity, and, you know, 21 years later, I'm still there.
So what does the producer of the show actually do? So we obviously hear the finished product. Well, yeah, the finished product. We hear what goes out on the airwaves. But what is your role during the week? How does it all come together? We love that kind of, you know, back-end access stuff.
Again, I've been really lucky just to work with great teams. Radio is all about chemistry. I mean, you guys have got the chemistry sitting on your couch over there, and that's what you need with great radio shows. You need chemistry. I've been fortunate to work in the first incarnation was JB, Jason Dunstall, Sam Newman, and Brian Taylor.
Yep.
You know, 4
unbelievable
geniuses in their
Amazing.
own right, and they just gelled together so unbelievably well. Like, as the producer, you're trying to keep the car on the road. But ultimately, they're so good at what they do, and the role of a producer is somewhat less than what you know doing TV. TV, you need to plan everything to within a second. In radio, not so much. It's a free flowing conversation. You know, there should be a lot of entertainment. So, you know, the first incarnation was those 4 that I said, and then Spud came along, and that sort of probably took it to another phase and another level, and then you know Juddy came in, and that was a whole other thing, and then
It was good too.
Yeah.
and then you know Chief came back all those years later, and probably for the last 5 years we've had the same group of guys on the Friday and then the Saturday as well.
How do you go being that 23 or 24-year-old? I'm trying to imagine it myself, and you've probably watched these guys as a kid, you know, and going for Carlton, you know, you would have been, you know, watching all these boys sitting behind that producer's desk, having almost directing them, telling them, you know, this is coming up next. Don't say this, say that. That's too far. That's not too. These are big names. Do you ever feel, or early days, did you ever feel that trepidation, that intimidation?
Absolutely.
How did
Absolutely.
you go with it? And did they give you shit for it, or?
If you weren't getting shit, that it almost means you're not part of it.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I think I've been fortunate to work for a radio brand that is known for giving shit and having a real, you know, footy club type environment. And yeah, we have a lot of fun, which sort of helps. But yeah, certainly those first couple of years, it's intimidating when you got these giants of the game, which they were or still are, it was intimidating.
I can only imagine. I mean, we were lucky enough to have Sam Newman on our show, and just to sit across from him for an hour, like, in terms of, I don't think we get intimidated too often, but I mean, that was one where you kind of go, geez. But to tell these guys kind of what to do and keep them in line. Have you got any examples of a time you might have had to reel them in, or something's gone maybe too far, and you have to say, guys, like, you almost have to play principal or teacher or whatever you want to call it?
Look,
He's going to be so careful.
I
The
am.
only thing Luke is so worried about is any of this getting out.
I did say to you guys that I have severe trepidation about talking too much, because I know what particularly the Friday Huddle guys, they will watch this and they will cut it up and they will use it against me. So, no, not to look. One of the early examples was Sam. I mean, Sam's he's such a generous on-air performer, but he's also unbelievable behind the scenes as a teammate, because ultimately that's what we are. And I still chuckle at the time that he called one of our callers. I vividly remember it. He said to one of our callers, "You, sir, are a f***wit."
That's right.
And you go, right. And then I remember JB and BT said, and I think JB's line was, "Oh, I think we've got a technical problem there." And it was, but it was that's radio, and that's Sam. But yeah,
How much of these guys, these names, play a certain character? Because they all live their own lives away from the microphone on radio. And I know that the station, especially the Triple M footy category of the station, is very blokey bloke, very footy club focused. And that's why it's so good, and that's why we all love it. But I sometimes look and I go, like, and it's the same with us. When we come in here, you're not the same as when you are walking down the street or at home with your family. Are they very different from when they're in front of the mic with the run sheet in front of them compared to going out for lunch before the show?
No. I think that's what makes them so unique and so authentic.
Yeah.
You know, what you see is what you get. Like going out, we had a dinner Friday night for Chief's 60th. The same banter on air continued off air, because that's just the way it is.
That footage was hilarious, by the way, with the birthday cake.
No, again, we just it's a group of mates sitting around. I mean, JB again is a genius, because what he does is he makes everyone else around him better. And he said way back when, it's just like we're all sitting around at the pub talking shit, and that's worked. I mean, that said, you've got to evolve, and society's evolved, and we've probably been really fortunate over the last couple of years to add the likes of Abby Holmes and Nat Yanidis and Kate McCarthy, and there's so many women now that have come in and just fit in really, really well. And they love a joke as well, but they love footy, and they know it. So things have evolved, and it's great.
What are some of your favourite memories, I mean, looking back, of specific moments you can remember on air that will just live with you forever, that you're glad that you witnessed it, live?
Oh, look, peak Triple M Saturday rub for me was when Spud, Gary, Damo, JB, and BT. It was, I think that was sort of unrivaled. There was probably a 4 or 5 year period where every single Saturday we'd turn up and it was just fun.
Yeah.
And you'd just laugh, and you wouldn't know where things were going to go. You knew that Spud would try and belt you. And, I mean, the thing with Spud was he was a genius. He didn't probably know how good he actually was at the caper. But he was the glue. Again, fortunate you got Gaz that and they all knew their role. Everyone knew their role and played it so well. Like, Damo is very underrated with what he brings to the table. Not necessarily adored by everybody out there, but he plays his role very, very well. They all played their roles, and it came together. But Spud, geez, it was he was something else.
Because they talk on air, and you've heard it so many times, where there's double agents and they stitch each other up. But I'm almost thinking the biggest double agent that almost would have to be might be yourself. Like, you might have to keep a straight face. Do you have intel on those Saturday mornings that something's coming for one of the guys, but you've got to keep it
I'll
a
cut
secret?
you off because my Saturday mornings, or these days it's WhatsApp.
Yep.
Back then it was just text message.
Yep.
And I would literally get 4 or 5 phone calls from each of them saying, I've got something on the other one, but you can't tell him.
Yeah.
And it got to a point where I was forgetting about who was telling me what, and occasionally you'd put your foot in it, but you have to use your judgment on what should I tell them, should I not, should I let that go, should I not. They were fun days. I mean, the group texts, particularly with Spud, who was illiterate, and he had the big fat fingers and he didn't really know how to type, and I actually set up his Twitter account, and some of the stuff that he was tweeting, and he just didn't know what he was doing. It still makes me laugh, and all these years later, it's I think I speak on behalf of everyone at Triple M. I mean, something every single day reminds me of Spud. He's a massive hole in the heart.
Yeah. We want to play you a little bit. This is
this one of your favourites?
Yeah, well, I think this is a universal favourite. This is probably one of
all time.
Well, all time. So yeah, hit that button, Sam, and we'll have a quick listen.
Susie. Well, I've had to change the name. Susie. Hope you are well.
Just easing into it.
Susie. I have makeup.
Oh, no.
But I find when I put it on, it is too white looking.
The chief.
I have used some of the boys' makeup.
This is a disgrace.
And it seems a lot darker.
I tell you what.
Can I get some of this darker colour?
Chief, I tell you.
Or tell me what colour and I will buy some.
Look, I'm not sure if
Thanks, Sammy.
if you weren't a Triple M listener, you'd probably look at that and listen to that and think, what the hell are they talking about? It's so in. But it seemed to work for us,
Well, maybe can you, for those that may not be aware of that, some of the listeners and viewers, maybe can you set the scene of what happened that day for what we just heard?
that in particular, that started a week before because JB's brother worked for the Coaches Association and he was given a tip off by the makeup lady at Fox. And, ultimately Jim had this information which he shared with the rest of us except for Spud and turned up and he'd written himself a prepared statement as only Jim can because he's got a way with words. And Spud had no idea, completely blindsided. And it took him a while to figure it out. And finally the penny dropped on air and oh shit, this is about me. And they're the best ones. When you can keep a secret and you can actually see the drop in expression from one of the guys that's about them, it's not scripted, it's authentic and it's banter.
Does Jim write a lot of the stuff? Because I've heard,
he's very clever.
Yeah.
Have you seen the podcasting space? That's obviously still a new thing. It's probably, how long has it been in? 10 years?
15, yeah. 10.
I'm trying to think from a talent perspective, radio, and producing. Early days, was it seen as a threat in the radio industry? Like, there's this other media arm that might be taking away listeners. Was there any of that?
I don't think it was a threat. I just don't think people, or the execs at that point, you're talking about 10 years ago, I just don't think they thought it was going to get to where it's got to.
Yeah.
I think Mark Howard's probably the greatest example of a podcast. I vividly remember he rang me one night and he said, I think I'm gonna have a conversation. I think his first one might have been Dennis Cometti, who was calling with us at the time. He said, what do you think if I just talk to him for an hour? I said, that's good. Where does it go? And he said, I don't know. I'll just put it out somewhere and hopefully people listen to it. And to see his progression over a 7-8 year period in that space is, I think, the best example. Like, podcasting, there's a million podcasts now. You've got to have a point of difference. Without a point of difference, you just get lost in the clutter. And I think you've got to have a really good platform, you know, whether it's Listener or something like that. You've got to get the mass. If that's what your aim is to get a mass audience, you need something like that. And how we figured that out after 2 or 3 years, he'd sort of built up a little bit of a loyal following, but then it exploded once he had the marketing and things behind him. And, you know, he's obviously grown his podcast now to what it is.
It's an interesting point Dos makes because we've seen it as well. We've been doing this over 4 years now, and probably some of the guys you would have worked with over the years, maybe our interpretation of how they saw it at the start, it's like they almost took the piss out of it, and I'll stay away from it. Where now it's being more and more embraced. You know, they might start popping up on a podcast here or there, then they start their own. And we've seen that progression, and it looks like there's been some kind of shift somewhere. I don't know if it's because they see the monetary opportunity or just what you have to do to keep evolving. But we've certainly noticed, haven't we?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, I think you've got to evolve because the whole industry's evolved, right? So radio isn't just radio. Radio now it's everything. You know, it's social media, it's podcasting. So you need to be able to understand that, hey, you're going to have cameras. You're on radio. Once upon a time, you just sat there with microphones. You didn't have cameras pointing at you. And now that's every call you make, either in the studio or at a ground, these guys have got cameras pointing at them now because, you know, it's a visual medium as much as it is an audio medium now.
Do you have a fair bit to do with Listener itself and producing podcasts?
I don't.
Okay.
But we've got an incredible team
that
do that. Michael James looks after that. But I think the social media guys, that has, again, it's evolved so much over the last couple of years. We've got Beersy. I'm going to give him a shout out. Beersy, Jasper. Who am I missing? Ethan. The guys do a great job in amplifying the content. You know, once upon a time, you'd do a call or you'd have an interview and it would be heard or listened to that once. Now it gets replayed over and over and over on socials. And then, you know, this circle of life within the AF, you know, if I use AFL as an example, is something happens on a Friday or a Saturday. The guys put it out on socials. Then it's picked up on a Sunday for Bounce on Fox or Monday night on Footy Classified, and you know all these shows use that content as well. So it's the circle of life within football media.
Yeah,
I'm interested. If a new radio station popped up tomorrow and you were headhunted and you were the head of it, you're going to produce a new show, not necessarily. Well, let's say footy-ish, a footy entertainment show, probably similar to the Rub, and you have to headhunt, say 4 guys. Who are you headhunting? Out of all the guys you've worked with over the years.
That's hard.
Well, I can't win with this because
he loses.
if I say...
What if we beep every name out?
If I say the OGs from 20 years ago, then the Friday Huddle guys will be pissed off and vice versa.
True.
So,
what if you had to headhunt 2 people?
Look, no, I'm going to take a knee.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
I've just been so fortunate to work with so many great people over 25 years. I think, you know, JB as a radio person doesn't get the credit that he deserves because he's a genius at the craft, and you only see Rush Hour. I mean, I was fortunate to be there at the start of the Rush Hour, got that off the ground with those 2 boys, and you know, and Bill. I mean, he plays his role. He's amazing at that. So, yeah, I shouldn't single anyone out. Now the Friday Huddle boys will crack the shits. But anyway,
I mean, what you've done is absolutely incredible. And I look at what you've created and the brand the reputation you've created and built over the time, and it's amazing. And I'm a big believer in like learning from my dad, who he was in the events and talent space and knew a lot of these guys, and seeing how important relationships is, building good relationships is. But for you, it's taken you overseas as well. Like doing some bit of research and reading a bit. Like, going and doing Wimbledon, like, can you share that experience? Like, you're not just in AFL markets or Australian markets. You're going overseas. You're doing the Grand Prix. You're doing all these amazing things.
Look, again, in our cape, I mean, I would love to have been an AFL footballer or, following Ian Healy's footsteps and be a wicketkeeper for Australia. The reality was I wasn't good enough.
The recruit wasn't around.
And the recruit wasn't around. I would have definitely got drafted at that point. But no, you got to know your abilities, and mine wasn't on the field, unfortunately. So the next best thing is to work in sport. And again, I've had so many unbelievable experiences overseas, and with what we do at Jam TV, we deal with all sports. So it's taken me to many places. If you'd said to me that I would have spent a week with Usain Bolt in Norway, in Oslo, a week before the 2012 London Olympics, I would have said, how does that happen? But it has. I could name drop a lot here. So I'm actually going to pull up because I'm going to pull myself up. But
We've never had a guest pull up more than this ever.
I feel for him.
But Luke, it's very diplomatic.
We're just grateful you're here.
We're grateful you're here. And
but without name dropping, I'm lucky with the sports that I have been. It's taken me to some unbelievable places overseas.
What if we just listed off a heap of names and he just has to nod or shake? Like, only audio,
Probably the one I'm
Who's the last 10 people he's texted? Yeah.
No, you're not getting near my phone. Probably my number one though was The Rock.
Wow.
We actually had believe it or not, this wasn't overseas. This was here. We're The Rock on the Footy Show on the House of Bolger. So if you before The Rock became the biggest movie star on the planet, he did a cameo on the House of Bolger, of which I was involved with. And
what a throwback.
Sitting here sharing a set with The Rock, you sit there and he's got 300 million followers on Instagram. You go, wow.
House of Bolger.
I don't remember that. I remember the House of Bolger. I don't remember
The Rock.
No.
Yeah.
Well, you'll need this.
There's a DVD. I should go and find it.
Yeah.
There is a DVD of the House of Bolger, but I'll give a plug because we've just put together 2 anniversary specials for the Footy Show.
Oh, yeah.
30th anniversary, which is on 9. I'm not sure when this is going to go to air, but they may have already gone to air. If they have, get it on 9 now because it's got the House of Bolger.
What the hell?
Yeah, Croft and Roland and Joy Bell.
Roland. Yeah.
Joy Bell.
Is that Bill? Yeah.
Look at that.
What was Gary's character's name?
He was a bad guy, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Twin.
I can't remember.
I remember Boston. Was it Boston?
Boston Crab.
Yeah.
Boston Crab.
Yeah. Oh, mate, that's hilarious. This is a question without notice. Did you have anything to do with that show on, I think it was Triple M and Fox Footy, and it was podcasting before podcasting, The Gospel?
Would you believe it? Friday night, having the conversation with Chief and Nathan Brown.
Yeah.
Both of them were on the show. And no, I didn't.
Because you're not allowed to talk about it anymore.
I'm not. Again, I'll take a knee on that. But no, that was Lee Simon. And again, that was a show ahead of its time. Because ultimately it was a radio show on TV, and that was ahead of its time. So, yeah, I'm not going to go any further.
No, that's okay. Well, we had a good conversation off air too, and I think Dos asked a really good question, and it's for people that are looking to get into the space. Something we've certainly learnt over our journey, well, even prior to doing the show in previous careers, it's not what you know, it's who you know. I'm a big believer in that. Taking opportunities, saying yes, learning the rest later. But what are some tips you could give to anybody aspiring to go into a similar career than you have? Because, off air you said, look, I don't have a uni degree. There's probably no clear path. Yeah, how would someone go about it?
Work hard. Put yourself forward. Again, the relationships thing is a really big part of it. But just put yourself forward. There's so many opportunities in TV or radio if you say that you're going to do the work. And that's not saying, I want to be paid to sit in the back and learn. No, volunteer your services for a little while, because I'll tell you what will happen. Eventually, or sooner rather than later, an opportunity will present itself and you're there. You're the first one picked because you're there and you've put the work in. And, I've seen that in radio, particularly with, through Eddie's breakfast show. They had so many, I'd call them interns, volunteer their time because they wanted to get into the space. They were turning up at 5 a.m, weren't getting paid a cent, and ultimately they'd graduate to getting, an associate producer role, and then a producer role, and then the executive producer. Like there are steps in place, but unless you're willing to work hard and sacrifice, then you just won't get there. It's not about a uni degree, although there's nothing wrong with having a uni degree. I'd just say hard work trumps all of that.
There's a guy on LinkedIn that I follow. I can't remember his surname, but he's the founder of SportsGrad. I don't know if you know SportsGrad.
No.
Essentially, it's almost like a network for people that want to get in sport. His name's Ruben, and he travels the world, and he's created this network in different countries if you want to work in sport. But he always goes on about posting it, and that is the number one thing is go and volunteer. Like you have, and I remember, same as you, we laugh about this. We've talked about this plenty of times on the podcast over the years, but you get to the age where you know you're not going to play AFL. Like you get to 14, 15, you go, I'm not getting picked for TAC Cup. It's not happening. The next thing I want to do is work in it. And I just remember wanting to be in sport management. Okay, well, my dad was like, well, go and volunteer at a VFL club. And I did that for like 7 years. Got my degree, got a job at an AFL club, realised it wasn't for me, but I only got it through the work experience, not even the degree.
Yep.
So I think what you're saying is spot on. Yeah.
The idea of getting a foot in the door, particularly in sport, probably more than anything else, because you can work in sports industry, whether it be at AFL land or club land or the media, as long as you're a hard worker, you can get a start. You couldn't go to a lawyer's office and volunteer because you don't have or go and be a doctor without the credentials. But I think in sport, your passion and hard work will, take you places.
So as we sort of come towards the end, in the next kind of year or two, can you give us any teasers of what we can expect to see in the doco landscape, or is there anything?
We've got a number of things cooking at the moment. Which I'm under NDA of. So
Okay, fair enough.
I'm trying to think anything that's public at the moment. No, nothing is public.
That's okay.
But look, again,
exciting projects though.
Well, we do sport is our DNA, being at Jam TV, and that's what we're really known for. But we do things outside of sport in the true crime space.
Yep.
Love that. And true crime is a really hot genre with all the streamers. So we've got a number of those in production at the moment, which you'll see within the next sort of 12 to 18 months.
Yeah, cool. What's been your favourite over all the jobs you've had, all the people you've worked with, the different aspects? What's probably been your favourite project you've worked on?
I've got so many favourites. And I don't say that flippantly. For different reasons, the Recruit was a pretty monumental experience, to be honest. It was all encompassing. So that was pretty crazy. Making their mark was during COVID. We were shut down, and then we had to rescue it. And then, I think what the team put forward was, incredible.
Did that work in your favour in the end?
It did. No doubt it did, because it was different.
Yeah.
We showed the inner workings of these clubs and these players that were going through turmoil, and were living in hubs and things like that, and nobody really got to see the inside of all that, and we had the access, and we were lucky enough that year to have the winning team in Richmond. We also had the bottom team in the Crows, who lost 16 games in a row. So to see the contrast between there and there.
And that will hold up, if you think about it, that will hold up in 50 years, because they'll never be, I'm sure that was probably one of your mottos, but they never will.
It's a time capsule. We always said exactly that. We embraced the chaos of COVID, because it was chaos.
Yeah.
We were doing it remotely. And we said at the time, in 20 years' time, 30 years' time, when we're not here, kids will probably watch this going, what was that COVID thing? And you point them to that.
That's true.
That's what COVID was.
That's incredible. Yeah, I've never thought of it that way. So
off air, you briefly touched on, and this is what I love. I love knowing more of the day in the life. You mentioned conversations you've had, people you've spoken to today. Can you maybe share a little bit about what your typical, if it's certain week or is it a certain day, what does it look like? Who do you talk to on the regular?
Why I love what we do at Jam in particular. I mean, the Triple M stuff is fantastic, but it's what you're doing every week. You turn up to a ground, you have some fun, and you call a game of footy. But it's same. Although you're talking about different teams and players, but what we do at Jam is it's so broad in sports or leagues or broadcasters that on any given day you could be dealing with the AFL, the NBL, PGA, NRL, A-Leagues, WNBL, or you could be dealing with Netflix, Amazon, Disney, Stan, 9, 7, ABC, 10, or you could be dealing with one of the clubs, and that could be an AFL club, an NRL club, or you're dealing with player managers and in all the different codes. So no one day is ever the same, and I think that's what makes it really exciting that we get to play in such a broad sporting space.
Sounds stressful.
Yeah.
It's honestly it's a lot of fun, and it's no doubt it's a challenging environment at the moment, the media landscape. Certainly not immune to the challenges that the world is facing at the moment. So you've got to continue to evolve with it, and hopefully we can continue to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're going to change tact a little bit. I want to ask a bit of a random question. Your golfing skills?
Horrific.
Horrific?
Having 3 children doesn't allow me to get out onto the course nearly enough.
Do you have any putting mats at a Jam?
We have got a putting mat in our sales office.
Okay.
Shout out to the guys in that office, Pat and Mitch. My putting is just as bad as my long game.
Because we're going to put you through the Golf Box putting challenge shortly, where you're going to have a putt for a charity of your choice. But do you have any more questions for Luke before we?
No more questions. But I do want to say that Fleet Plan Hire Solutions,
Yes.
and naming rights partner, is sending Luke home with a little golf goodie bag.
Yes.
And then Golf Box is sending you home with a few little golf goodies as well, which is nice of them. But I can't wait to get into the putting.
Well, before we do, where do you head for the best golfing equipment and attire?
Oh, golfbox.com.au. It gets
one
to you
place.
fast and free. Don't want to go anywhere else but that.
Hold on, I'm going to break the fourth wall here. You've done that without the auto cue. You guys are on fire.
Thanks, Luke. Thanks.
Proper professionals. Well done.
I'm glad you didn't hear our ad reads, 10 minutes before you walked in, because they were horrific.
Yeah.
And that stuff will never will see the light of the day. We're about to head to a putting challenge, so if you're listening, head over to YouTube. Make sure you watch this part, because Luke's going to have 6 putts. Chance of glory.
And he's playing for a charity of his choice, $1,000. If he ends up on the top of that leaderboard, $1,000 goes to that charity.
Yeah, but he's also playing for his pride, and that's
the main thing.
That is the main thing. And we had a very good putter in the episode before this, so there's a bit of pressure. But we're going to head over now. Luke, thank you so much.
Pleasure, boys.
It means a lot to us.
Yeah.
You have been at the top of our list for a very long time.
I'm not sure why, but I appreciate it, and I'm privileged to be in your studio.
We appreciate it. Thank you so much. Welcome back, everybody, to the dos&d show, our favourite segment of the show. We're about to put the great Luke Tunnecliffe through the Golf Box putting challenge. This is pressure. This is forget documentary making. This is serious pressure. Now, Luke,
as Happy Gilmore said, I eat pressure for breakfast.
he's very
something similar.
He's very confident. Now,
I don't think that's the line.
I know what the line is, but I wasn't going with the real one.
maybe give us 2 words to describe yourself as a golfer, and please don't be modest. It's not the time for that.
Average and awful.
Okay, quite modest, obviously. So you're going to go through a putting challenge, Luke, and before we explain the rules, Golf Box are very generously going to give $1,000 to the winner after 6 months. So do you have a charity in mind that you'll be putting for today?
I do. The Whatability Foundation. They do an amazing job with giving people experiences who have got challenges in their life or disability, and they have over 200 AFL, NRL, cricket and netballers and basketballers on their books, and they take these people out for day trips. So they might take them to the zoo or the aquarium or to mini golf or golf, and they do such a good job. So Whatability Foundation, I hope I can do you proud.
Very worthy cause. Well, let's send some money their way. So the way you're going to do it, you've got 60 seconds. You're going to have 6 putts. Now, the scoring is quite simple. If you can land flush in this bullseye, it's 50 points. Working backwards, 25, 20, 15. This square is 10. 5, 3, 1. And anything off the board is 0. But, Luke, if you can land it flush, and we mean flush, not close, but flush on that dot, it's 100 points. And to give you a bit of an idea, what's a really good score? 150?
Well, what was our last guest score?
We have to go check the tape. We think about 160, 170, boys. So it's going to be tough. But mate,
Is it a fast track or a slow track?
What did Sippo say? He reckons it's quick.
Yeah, it's fast. It's very fast. I remember our first guest put it way further, almost towards the toilet over there.
Well, I will take, given when I don't get a practice, I'll take your advice. I'll hit this one soft, and we'll see.
One of your colleagues, Abby Holmes, had a crack at this. So
how'd Abs go?
She got about 58, I think. So so that might be if you can beat her, that'd be great.
There's the pass score. Okay.
Have we got so you're going to be counting, Jared? Awesome. All right.
Let's go, Luke. Come on.
Tell me when.
3, 2, 1. Let's go.
Luke Tunnecliffe, off he goes. First part,
He's gone for the 100. I like the eagerness.
It's a lot slower than I thought.
We didn't sell it very well.
No. 3 points for Luke.
What's that? That's 10? All right.
13.
This is not going well, boys.
That's okay.
That's all right.
You've still got how many left? Four to go?
That's better.
Oh, that's quick.
Rightio. This is.
We weren't lying.
This
We
is
were
gonna be
not
nice and
lying.
embarrassing. This is in the office.
Get yourself off the bottom. That's the main thing.
Oh, he's gone hard again.
So you've told me it's too slow, then it's too quick.
Yeah, will he go for 100? That's a question.
He hasn't been using the putter in the office.
5.
I'm officially going to be at the bottom of the leaderboard.
Now, before you take this last
No, I am actually. So it's okay.
he is bottom at the
Is he?
moment.
Oh.
You're going to need probably about
A bullseye.
probably bullseye to get yourself off the bottom.
Come on, Luke. Come on.
Luke.
Come on.
Luke.
I did tell you at the start, though.
Here we go.
Oh no!
Too long.
Well,
He spent the whole interview trying to find something that can't be clipped up, and unfortunately, he may have just produced it at the last hurdle.
You know
the
what?
good news is we'll do this again, right?
yeah, take 2 coming up.
Pre-record, so we'll go again.
Well, look, I hate to say, but you're currently the bottom of the leaderboard, but that's okay.
So what do I get for that?
Well, maybe
You are going home with a few goodies.
You are, so we're going to send you home with some goodies anyway, because
Lessons?
You know what? Golf Box, I think, probably sell lessons.
yeah, they probably do. So, but again, for everybody, for all your golfing needs, if you want to take home this beautiful mat, some of these, what have we got? TaylorMade golf balls, the Spider putter, you can find that all at golfbox.com.au, the very best, fast and free.
Thanks again, Luke. Thanks for
Pleasure,
playing.
boys.